I was wearing a baby up until about 2 minutes ago, and I just pulled her off and handed her over to Jason. So,
well, appreciate it nonetheless. You could have worn the baby. I know that you've been probably rocking. You've been rocking the baby since wearing the baby was not even cool.
Yeah. Well, and this one she gets right around now is typically her nap time.
So, okay. So we've timed it perfectly.
Yeah. So it's one of those I put her in. You'll learn about these soon. It's like a 40-foot long piece of cotton that you need a PhD to learn how to tie this thing. It's called a Moby wrap.
Oh, geez. No, that looks way too complicated. And the risk involved with the child falling out of the thing is like, I'm no seaman, so I don't think I can like tie the knots that are going to like.
I have to say the baby, when they're little teeny tiny, the way you have to wrap it to get them in is almost impossible. But now once they hit about 12 pounds, it actually gets remarkably easier.
Okay. I don't know. I think you're giving me far too much credit.
Oh no, trust me. The first probably 20 times I tried to do this, Jason would be holding the baby and I'd be playing a YouTube video being like, wait,
which already shows me there's a flaw in the design. So I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm more of like, give me the structured thing, even if I have to pay more for it. Just give me whatever the heck I have to put it in. And that's what we're doing.
If you guys haven't bought one yet, if you're looking at them, what I'd say is for the structured things, get one that you can have the baby outward facing and inward facing.
Yeah.
Like the first time we bought one, I didn't realize the difference between them. So I just was like, oh, it's cute. Roy hated being inward facing. And so we never used it.
Makes sense. Hey, Pat.
Hey, Christy, what's up?
Pretty good. Well, it's slightly different from the last time we got together because this time it's coffee.
Yeah.
I thought about kicking a beer out, but I was like, well, it's 9:00 in the morning. Not everybody might appreciate that.
Yeah, well, they don't need to know that. We don't need to tell them where you're based right now.
Pretend I'm somewhere like London.
Yeah. And honestly, they're now saying, oh, Reinhardt, this is one just for you. You've heard now that alcohol makes you susceptible to COVID?
Guess I'm susceptible to COVID.
I was teasing Arnson because they had that one scene like smoking weed makes you susceptible. And I just wrote ahem. I didn't say who. And he's like, are you pointing at me? I'm like, hey, if you identify yourself with this, I guess that's your problem.
I'm like, it's pretty obvious that drinking would make you susceptible because like, of course it does. It lowers your immune system in general. It makes you do stupid things. I mean, yeah, okay. So, but if you're doing stupid things in socially distanced, I think you're all right. In fact, I would recommend most people drink and be stupid socially distant from me. Please stay 6 feet or more away from me when drunk as hell.
Oh.
And and it goes both ways. I will stay away from you if I'm drunk as hell, 6 feet or more. Done.
Well, and if I will have you guys let me know if I freeze. I don't know how your guys' Wi-Fi has been. Ours ebbs and flows.
Yeah, ours are up and down here.
Yeah, so for the most part, it's been pretty good, but I was actually doing a webinar with the drum on Wednesday morning, and every time they'd ask me a question, it would come.
It's always like that. You've frozen a bunch of times so far, Christy, and Pat freezes at least like 6 or 7 times a show but his are pretty quick. I want to go kiss Spectrum on the lips. I'm so excited with these guys. They've kept me, at least unless you guys tell me that I'm not coming in clearly, but they have been like amazing in terms of I'm seeing better internet now than I was usually. So they did something right in New York City. I don't know what it is.
Maybe it's the millions and tens of millions of people they have to optimize for, where like I'm in a suburb with about 5,000 people. So you're like,
True. Well, they get one building right here and they're nailing at least like 800 units. So, and if you need to grab her, by all means, we completely understand.
Okay. Let's try this. She's hiding under the table trying to grab the dog.
Nice. Is she successful in doing this or?
The dogs keep on moving. So.
Smart dogs. It's 12:02. We'll give it like one more minute and then we'll kick off and people will stream in as necessary. I know we also have
Michael. Hi, Scott. So do we see everybody who joins? Is that how this is going to?
No, we don't see everyone. We see everyone who
Okay.
doesn't want to be a marketing voyeur, but like 90% of people, with exception of our good friend Michael Murch, who, bam, look at that. I say his name and he appears, especially, well, if you say his name 3 times in the mirror, he pops up. It's like Candyman, but cooler.
Don't do that.
Without the death. So yeah, we basically, it's whoever wants to be on camera. We love obviously seeing faces. Like I said, these are my only friends in the whole world. So they tend to skew male, as our industry unfortunately does more than it should. But thank you for right now being the token female on video camera. That's great.
In New York, we just happen to see other humans without masks on.
Yes, that's true. It's very true. We're a small, intimate group right now, but you know what? Let's do this. Let's just kick it off and we'll go from there. I think it's worth it. And we'll just start conversation. So, hey guys, I'm Stefan Bajayo. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Search from Home. As usual, my co-host this time to my, what is that? My right, Patrick Reinhardt. Am I still? Okay, always for some strange reason. It's
because
very
you're the
weird.
first one who logs in.
So I'm always, so now you're getting smart. You're going to actually look this. Did you search this?
No, I
just
noticed
using
it yesterday that it's when someone like turns it's the order that people come into the webinar. That's how they order the boxes.
Interesting.
And like,
so Merch was the last to log in.
Yeah, and say like Christi turned her video off, she would then go next to Merch because then the boxes would ship.
So what you're saying is if we want to do a disco of video moving around, we just on and off our cameras and it'll just
I think so, yeah.
Unfortunately, I think for the recording of this, it would not. Anyway, let's get to the point. We have Christi Olson, the head of evangelism for Microsoft here, a good friend, a new mom, second times over, who has her new little one with her and is fresh off maternity leave. So thank you so much, Christi, for taking the time to be with us. We're so excited to have you here.
And just as somebody comes on to see the baby, I drop her down.
Well, in all fairness, you didn't drop her down. You placed her down.
I placed her on the floor next to me, so that way she's
I've been getting
fun.
all my pre-parenting tips from Christi over email in products I need to buy, and I was told it's good that I'm having a girl, so I don't need to get a PPTP. And then she had to get into detail with me over the phone as to what a PPTP was.
If you didn't know, I was a little bit shocked.
You've all joined to learn about PPTPs today on Search from Home. So yes, we've changed it into a parenting channel. Again, thanks so much for joining us. I'm really excited to get into what's going on out there. It's been crazy. You're in the north of Seattle area, right? So you're at the beginning of this thing.
Yes.
How are you doing?
We're doing good. So our offices are about 5 miles away from where the initial outbreak really was here in the US. And so I'm about 8 miles away from home. So it's hit pretty close to home because we all know someone that is in the hospitals or working in the hospitals near there. But I have to say, almost everybody I know has been healthy and safe, including the doctors and nurses we know that are at the hospital that was at the heart of the main outbreak. So we've been really fortunate on that end.
Wow. Well, I'm really glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I guess you were in the middle of maternity leave, so this was pretty weird for you. You'd already been at home, and so does this, like, on a scale of 1 to 100, how much does this change your life in terms of like the COVID aspect of it?
Well, it's a bit weird. So Microsoft has some absolutely amazing benefits. So if anybody's ever looking to go to work for someone, Microsoft's a good company, especially if you're planning on having a baby. Because I actually was not on maternity leave when it started, but we are allowed to take, I think we have 20 weeks of maternity leave and you can split it in 2. I had 3 weeks left. So when they announced school closures, I started talking to my boss about, I don't know how to live with a 4-year-old and a baby. And no schools or daycares running. So they let me take 3 weeks off, which I had up until her first birthday, which was Tuesday of this week. So I only had about a month off. So we started COVID, was working, and then took the last month essentially to figure out how to live in this really fun time. So what I would say is it's been actually really interesting to see like the evolution of Zoom, like the Zoom calls, and even we use Microsoft Teams all the time, of how people are sharing data and insights, because in the office, I probably wouldn't have got as much information as I've been getting recently, just based on how we've all been coming together virtually in the last 3 weeks.
Does that mean you're invited to things you otherwise wouldn't have been invited to? Or is it over communication of what they were communicating before? Like, is it like now everyone has to think who's supposed to be in this meeting more actively than they did previously? It was a physical thing before, now it's virtual, so it's easy to forget someone. So I feel like people are actually thinking through who needs to be there, and like more people are added. Is that what you're getting into, or?
It's a little bit of both. So I'd say that meetings that we really didn't need to go to, we can drop off of and we don't need to participate in. There's certain things that we had been working on and prioritizing, like getting regular, like weekly data and insights calls with our analysts that we weren't invited to previously, but now not only are we invited to them, like they're walking us through the PowerPoint decks on a weekly basis to explain what does this mean for automotive, financial services, health and wellness, like every vertical. We're going in to understand what are the search trends we're seeing, what are the behavioral shifts, how do we communicate them, and what's going on in general, which before we had that, but it was on a massive it was in PowerPoints on a SharePoint site that was really difficult potentially to navigate, at least maybe on my point of view, where they'd be like, here's a link and here's 700 decks, you figure out. But now they're literally talking to us on a weekly basis to explain what's happening and the shifts going on, which have been really amazing to see, like the changes in consumer behavior, which we wouldn't have seen otherwise potentially, or I wouldn't have known all about it as much.
Interesting. Are they making, I know insights has always been like a key focal point for like Microsoft and Bing, right? And in fact,
Yes.
like that's the essence of what you do to a degree, is sharing those and getting them out there, much like we plan on doing today. But is it now almost like ubiquitously important because now there's a common shared problem that the world has, so you almost have this driven need that everyone should get their hands on this data more easily, more frequently? It's just more important.
Yeah, and I'd say it's been really good to see that the collaboration has gone way up. Where before we would see, like I sit in the marketing organization, our sales teams would get access to the decks on a regular basis and walk through, but it's just how we all engaged. It was sort of siloed, and we really do see now that it's less of the silos, that everybody's really working to communicate together. We also saw like the ability to go to our leadership team and say, hey, this is really important. We have all these really great learnings. Let's get a section of the website up. Let's update it on a weekly basis with insights across all the verticals as we have the research coming. Let's go fast instead of be perfect with everything all at once. Because before there was a little bit of concern of, well, the deck's not perfect. Well, it doesn't have to be perfect. Let's get information out there so people know what's happening and know the changes that are happening as they come, so that they can be reactive and responsive to their customers, their clients, or even within their own business.
Yeah, I got to give you guys a shout out because when I was building my 24,000 keyword kind of structured category for COVID, which at the time we were calling coronavirus. See, Pat, you're right. We switched it. Now everyone calls it. No one who says coronavirus. That's so like 5 days ago.
Yeah, so 5 weeks ago.
Right, but it's almost like that. You know, everyone's gone to the shorter version. You know, as I was doing that research, I was pulling a lot of information from, and I was doing comparisons. I was looking at what Google could give me, auto suggest, stuff like that. I was getting a lot more out of Bing, even if it was zero search volume. I was getting more suggestions out of you guys and out of Microsoft than I was out of Google, which was, I don't know why. I mean, you know, but I like the fact I was able to get more data, even if I couldn't get the search volume, but even zero, that was okay with me. That was fine. I knew that zero was going to happen. I just needed the trend, right? And that was, I wasn't looking for the number at this point. I was looking for the keyword. So it really helped a lot. I was impressed by what you guys put together.
Well, it's interesting to say, and at some point, well, maybe you and I will have to sit down and do a webinar on it of There's some different tools a lot of people, especially on the SEO side of the house, aren't aware of, but we have some Excel plugins that are more on the advertising side that if you have a login to Microsoft Advertising, you can log into it and it'll pull real-time search query data. I don't know if that's what you're using, but it's a whole other way to do essentially your keyword research. It's just right now it's tied to a Microsoft Ads login.
Right.
But when I've been doing SEO, I've been telling people like, hey, talk to your paid team because you want this login to be able to use the Excel plugin and go into the Insights tool and essentially you can do a ton of automation there that's really, really cool for pulling real-time stuff. It's not as pretty as Google Trends, I'll admit that, but it wasn't meant to be a Google Trends competitor. So
right. No. And I don't see them
research.
I don't see them as ubiquitous because Google Trends doesn't really help you as much with that research. Whereas like I'm looking for lists, right? And I actually don't even need to see the trend at this point. I just need to trust that the source is telling me this is an up and coming term, right? This is happening. We're seeing this happen. We can't tell you how much yet, but we know that due to the fact we're seeing this term being queried more and more, it's a term of consideration for you. And then I obviously categorize it into, okay, well, those are symptom terms and those are our product related terms. And you can kind of get into all of that stuff and you make sense of it later. And then later when search volume is provided and all the good stuff comes, great. You can still go query the engines to see what's ranking for those things. And then you're like, aha, this is the content that shows up for it. Oh, that content also shows up for all of these keywords. Now you start to get an understanding of what the landscape looks like, right? But you need those words to seed off of, to start off with. And I mean, I was everywhere. I was Answer the Public. I was going anywhere I could get. I mean, I hate to say this, but keyword shitter came into the right when you pulled the baby up, man. I'm knocking 100.
I don't know that website for some odd reason. It's not one I think I've really gone to.
It literally is as good as it sounds. It will just dump massive numbers of keywords, and none of it is actually there's no context as to why. It just gives you a litany, and I'm not really sure even how it pulls. So that is more of my like lowest fidelity. But if I need a ton of terms for some strange reason to do an analysis on just words, that's a place I might turn to in my darkest of hours. I'll admit it. Yeah. Pat, have you turned to that source before?
Every once in a while, Stefan. Only on the darkest of days, though.
It's this is like a Keyword Shitter Anonymous group. I'm Stefan.
So Christi, so you travel all the time, right? Now
used
to. Used to. What do you think is going to happen to that? And how? Do you have any idea? Because that was a big part of your day-to-day. Honestly, every time you came to us, you were always just getting off a plane. We see each other at conferences, and it's like, what do you think? How much do you think that's going to hurt that part of the community, just not being able to go to these conferences?
It's been interesting because I partner with we call them experiential team for experiential events. And it's been really interesting because right now I think there's only one event that has not canceled. SMX Advance is the only event still on my calendar between now and mid-July. Everything else is canceled out. I'm not going to make guesses, but I just know we're making contingency plans if that doesn't happen. So I think right now what we've been trying to figure out is everything's been moving to virtual. So either everything's getting pushed back, postponed, go to virtual. And I would say that from the event standpoint, to me, it's really sad. I saw stuff I think I saw you, were you there mid-February? I'm trying to think if I saw you at the February event or if the last time I saw you was.
The last time we saw each other was probably
November.
I think it was at Advanced Search Summit in DC.
Okay. That's like, wow, it's been that long.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, you're right. We've been at a lot of conferences in the last 2 years where we're together. So yeah, it's been.
So I'm like, wait, did I see you in November? I think that the challenge is going to be that there's now a lot of webinars out there for education. We have a lot of Zoom meetings. Yep. We're getting a lot of great content. And where, at least for me, the learning doesn't typically happen on the webinars as much as it happens in those one-off conversations. And that's where I think like having the intimate group like you have today, where if Mert or Scott, Blake, or even Michael has a question, they can be like, hey, what's going on here? I learn more from that aspect a lot of times than a lot of the presentations. Like the presentations give me good food for fodder. It gives me ideas and concepts to start with, but it's those one-off conversations as you go from presentation to presentation that tends to get me really the learning aspect going. So I think that aspect of conferences is still going to be needed. It's that one-to-one connection that you have, like where Stefan, you and I met at a conference. I don't even know how many years ago.
We met at Advanced Search Summit in
Napa.
Technically in Napa, yes. So
okay,
that was
so that would have been
2 years ago.
Yeah, that would have been 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
And we've seen each other all the time. And like, I've come to your guys' offices and you guys mentioned something like, oh, we need to dive into that. Oh, let's talk about schema. Great. So how do we get more in play with schema to make sure that Microsoft and Bing is doing more to support? Who do we have on our end to get insights into this after just conversations we had? So it also gives me information of like, how can we be more plugged in to support aspects of the industry from the paid side to the organic side? How do we plug into you guys to say, how do you like Webmaster Tools? What's missing? What's coming? How do I work better with our engineering team? You've met, I think most of you on the call have met a handful of our amazing guys like Fabrice and Frederick.
Like,
Frederick. They've been out there and getting them to step up and be a little bit more visible, even though it's not their passion point to be speaking at conferences and events, but they know, like, I think I've told you before, I am an SEO, although I'm not a technical SEO. I ran Windows and part of the Office, the SEO for Windows and Office for 2.5 years. So I get all the basics, but you're not going to find me going into the log files. It's like, you don't want me touching the coding because I will break something. I promise that end. I can write the coding and I can write coding to implement like analytics implementation, everything else, but it's not my area of expertise right now to dig into those log files to find the insights. I will use other tools. I'll find other probably really time-consuming workarounds using Excel to get in and dig through data, but that's how I operate. And so like, I can speak to a lot of it, but when you get into the really super technical stuff, that's when I have to be partnered with Fabrice and Frederick and their entire team to say like, hey, when it comes to how we are parsing these things, what do we need to know? On the paid search side, I'm pretty much as technical as you can get because I've also been doing that for way too many years. And so it's been interesting to be able to get those insights. Now, from a conference standpoint, I think what we are going to see, which does sadden me, is we had this huge boom where we went from like 3 or 4 main conferences to
minis.
I did 80 in the 2018 calendar year. 2018, I had 80 events that I spoke at, which is a lot. I wanted to die at one point. Well, not really die, but I just wanted to curl up in a ball and sleep in my own bed. My estimate is that because everything that's happening, you're going to see a pullback on as many events, especially because so many events, it sounds like we're unfortunately left in a really bad position financially. So you're not going to see as many huge events. You're going to see like the pullback there, but I think that might actually work to some advantage, because then you're going to start to see the events getting larger again, where you don't have 100 people meeting here and 100 people meeting there. Like I do reminisce about SES New York way back in
Everyone
the day.
does.
Everyone,
Literally, you ask everyone what was the heyday, and they are like SES.
SES New York, where we had, I think it was like the first one I went to is 2007. I want to say there's like 5,000 or 6,000 people at that event. That we might start to see that resurgence. And I think we're going to have a lot of resurgence of events like today, where it's the community's coming together, where you get asked specific questions and people are sharing insights, but it is less multi-communication. It's more one way. But I'm hoping travel comes back, maybe not quite at the 80 events a year level that it was before, especially with little Miss Della and all of her challenges. So I'm looking forward to it. And I have a ton of airline credits. So let's see where we go.
Literally. No, I it's funny you bring all that up, and I wasn't even thinking about conferences with Christi, but obviously she's the one to talk to about that. Her and Greg Gifford are, neck and neck when it comes to like, let's speak everywhere. And obviously because they're so smart and have a lot to share. But yeah, I do feel like sometimes I've gone and spoken at a conference or two where I'm like, that room was pretty small. This was a large expense. Forget the like actual physical expense of flying and hotel and whatever, but the actual expense of time, of going out somewhere and being in a room that ends up being like 40, 50 people, which is okay. But it's like, you know, you do a lot of preparation, you get a lot of stuff together, you're trying to like get the message out, and then your megaphone is only this big, right? Whereas it really needs to be this big. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't love the one thing. It becomes too big at some point where I feel like I can't find the people I need. Like the thing I go to these conferences for, and I love what you said before, Christy, is I go for the same reason of what I think I learned the most in college with. At least I don't know how many people are actually using their degrees if they went to school or using their degrees actively today. But like most people do not use their degrees actively, but they do remember what they learned in the hallways. They learned the proverbial hallways, everything that was outside of class. I think some of the best conversations, some of the biggest learnings, some of the biggest takeaways I've had have not been based on what someone was saying from the stage. They're based on the conversations I was having with someone I had just met. Where do you meet people in a virtual space? Yeah. Where do you have drinks with someone in a virtual space where it's you and them, but it didn't start off you and them. You just happen to go up to the bar and they were at the bar and you're like, hey, what's your name? Where are you from? And then they're like, oh yeah, I do this at this company. And then you start chatting and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then you start sharing ideas and thoughts and all of a sudden friendships get built, and there's no real easy way to do that in this virtual environment. So that to me is like what sucks is I like that.
And it's so hard at events because this is what I struggle with is if you go too basic, then you lose all the people with more with experience. Yep. But if you go too advanced, then you lose all the new people coming in. So it's really hard because even if you say you have an advanced session, you have people that really don't understand the basic concepts coming in, and then they're completely lost for the entire presentation. So it's where I struggle with as somebody that speaks on a regular basis is how do you make content that fits everyone who could show up into a room? Yeah. So it's one of those, like, even now with COVID, as we're trying to figure out, like, how do we share data and information out there? We are really working on the, like, making it so it's basic enough so someone who's just coming in or the small business side where they aren't a search expert can access it and try to figure out, like, what does this mean? What are the next steps? But give enough extra context that somebody like everybody on this call can download the documents and be like, oh, here's what I take away from it, or here's how I change strategy. So really trying to create one thing for like 4 audiences has been my biggest challenge over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, you know, it's hard, you know, because like even, you know, like when you go to create a presentation at a conference, like you just said, like you can go into the clouds and you can go really, really up there, and you know, there's only probably 25% of that audience that probably knows what you're talking about or has experienced a similar situation. But you have to make it, you know, even if you're speaking at a very advanced thing, you know, you have to make it accessible to everyone, or else, you know, people are going to come up to you afterwards and be like, what the hell are you talking about? You know, and then you get like a bad score because no one understood what the hell what you were doing. So it's really hard to find. It's hard to find that balance. I found that myself too.
Yeah.
So let's pivot now. I want to talk COVID and your learnings. I know you have access to all this data. We teased everybody with that earlier. Wow. Okay, she's brought it on paper, so just hold it up to the screen and
start shuffling papers.
Slowly lift it up to the camera, and we will just read all together. So, Michael Brew, you can take the first paragraph, and Mert, you're on the next one. And Scott, it looks like you can take the third paragraph. We'll just read out loud.
Well, and what I'll say is I pulled up a couple different things only because I wanted to share some good insights. And like I said, we have so many, so I'll give a shout out. So if any of our AIG members are listening, so it's the Analytics, Automation, and Insights group. It is a team of, I think there's at least 100 analysts that are constantly going into the search data and trying to understand the trends of either how search behavior is changing, consumer behavior is changing, how things are trending over time. They are aligned by vertical for the most part. So it's somebody that's in automotive and financial services. They're looking really in depth in one specific vertical. So they've been in these verticals from anywhere from like 6 months to, I think the longest that I know of is like probably 3 or 4 years. So they have a lot of time spent digging into these insights, and they're looking like, okay, what happened in the last week, 2 weeks, 6 months, month, trying to figure out what is going on, what is shifting, and what should we be sharing with our customers and clients across the globe. We have this mainly, the two main offices are in the US, and then we have another group out of our European office set. So right now, and I'll share the bit.ly, and I had to write it down, is if you go to aka.ms/COVID Search Insights, it'll take you to a webpage on Microsoft Advertising that you can choose the region, and it has a breakdown of automotive, financial services, health and wellness, retail and consumer product goods, tech, telco, travel, and then other. Each of those tabs, they've been doing weekly updates on search data and search trends of things changing within that specific vertical. So a lot of what this is the handwritten notes from the latest sessions where we're talking through what are the changes happening week over week. And this is just a tiny, tiny subset.
So you're bringing us the crib sheet to
a crib sheet.
Should we pull that up? Do you want to share screen and do that, or it's up to you, whatever you feel like doing.
I'm going to share screen because what I would show you, because I don't want to go into each of the decks because each deck has anywhere from 10 to like 50 slides. Wow. And they're really, they're granular. So this is showing like the automotive crib sheet I have, which is the first paragraph here, is like what's shifting the last few weeks on automotive.
Sure.
It has high level like automotive purchase trends. So how are consumers changing their automotive buying habits? Well, you can guess they're not going out and buying cars as much. They're also not driving as much. Right. But what they are seeing, like what they discovered, is when you start going away from like the purchasing of vehicles, where are people spending time in the automotive sector? They're sitting on audio equipment, repairs, things of that. So they're going in at a pretty granular level for each of those verticals. Once you get into like the retail and CPG vertical, that is the vertical that I have to say is crazy. Because if you start to think about all the splits and the segmentation of that vertical, that's where you could have like luxury products, you have outdoor sporting goods, hobbies, home and garden. That's where we get a ton of insights. And that's the hard part for me to keep up with, is because literally people are really aligned to these almost niche segments. It's not like there's one person saying, here's retail across the United States or across the globe as a whole.
Retail's too big.
Retail's too big. Although they are looking at the general, our retail categorization of search trends all up to see like, how are things shifting? And so we have people looking at this absolutely amazing at an advertiser level, at a retail level, and a search trends level data to pull insights on a weekly basis. In addition to that, there is a vertical lead that is also trying to figure out, based on some of these trends, have we seen the bottom of the curve yet? And are we starting to see the increase happening? So have we hit the bottom, and are we starting to see the rebounds going? That data is not on our site. We haven't shared that out yet. At least publicly, but it has been really great to listen like, okay, here's the indicators when we look at a rolling averages across this specific niche, this segment, search trend behavior on a 1 week, 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, 12 month basis to start to see, are we seeing the trends starting to come back upward yet? And I did not create the charts, but they have talked me through them. And it makes sense how they're looking at it. What I would say is we haven't started to see I don't think it's any of the verticals yet. We haven't really seen the upward start to happen, that we're still in the midst of this pretty unprecedented, crazy time where behavior really has shifted and changed. We are seeing some verticals that are doing much better than others, like travel has not hit the bottom, or travel has not started to rebound yet. People aren't really purchasing flights for some odd reason, or hotels. Who would have thought? But we are seeing other areas like the hobby section or hobby sector has seen a huge uptick in overall volume. The challenge within the hobby sector, though, is can you actually get the things that you're searching for? So while we're starting to see more search behavior happening, it doesn't always parlay into the purchases at a retail level happening, because how many sites are having delayed shipments, aren't able to send products out, aren't able to fulfill orders, have delays in filling orders. So it's a really interesting world that our analysts and AIG are looking at for the consumer, the search behavior, to what we can tell from high level, all of the tracking tags of the purchase behavior then being realized on that back end, and then how that impacts how consumers are engaging across the board. And that's
have you
really
guys seen any particular industry make a significant shift in the way it responds? Like, I'll give you an example. You just said travel, and not a lot of people are buying travel on. I agree. But it's like, this is the MP3 moment for the music industry to the travel industry. Like, if it's thought about correctly, right? It's like, do you change your model right now, incentivize people to hold a rate or to buy something in advance to give you money now that they can then use later? Do you change your model so that you can keep up at least your, I mean, listen, your expenses are down. You're not flying as much stuff back and forth, but you also need to, your whole model is based on a certain amount of that. So I'm sure you're, hemorrhaging money. You also just got bailed out by the US government. So there's something else to be said about that. So my point is, like, do you create an incentivization model? Do you change your model? And would you be able to actually see that? Like, we've seen gyms or professional trainers, things like that, now going online. So now all of a sudden their revenue and their stream just changed from a physical location to now possibly serving so many more individuals. Does your data find a way to capture that sort of thing? Or is it hard to do because you'd have to be so specific to a given business or following like 50 businesses in their path?
So we are seeing it in some of the verticals. Retail is one of the verticals they've seen the biggest shift, where especially as you think of some of the shifts we've seen, especially in the retail vertical, are the buy online, pick up in store, where businesses had talked about adopting it for a long time, but they hadn't put all the technology on the back end to make it feasible. There's a meme I saw that was like, CEOs around a board table saying like, digital transformation is a must. And then you've probably seen this one, and they're like, but we have time. That shows a wrecking ball coming through.
I just put that up in our group. So it literally was a post I put up in our LinkedIn group, which I'm not sure if you joined yet, Christy, but we want you in there. The Search from Home LinkedIn group. If you haven't gone there, by all means, type Search from Home in your bar in LinkedIn, and shameless plug. Join the group. We share some good content on there after the show, and things like, we'll be sharing obviously the link to the bit.ly that you
perfect.
Provide.
Yeah, I'll have a couple links.
I literally just posted that like this morning. So
I saw that one a few weeks back, and it just made me chuckle, because one of the topics we've been talking about, because I have a couple different platform levels that we speak about. We speak about the very granular, like, here's the tactical go-dos. We talk about like search behavior and trends, and then we have sort of our thought leadership platform, which you've heard me talk on voice, and like voice was a pretty big one there for a while. I'm trying to think. I've been so in the weeds because I have a paper publishing next Wednesday that we've been trying to get across the finish line. So like, what is the topic other than that one? But voice, digital transformation, like 3 years ago, that and AI machine learning was huge for us. So like, finally other people are getting this topic. But we're seeing the adoption, like you said, of how do you change your business model on a dime. Restaurants is another one that they had to change their business model of people coming into the restaurant. Now, it's really hard to see that at a granular level, because you'd have to know every restaurant name,
right,
to see, are people then searching for delivery, takeout. But we can start to see some of the trends of how people are engaging in a restaurant, with specific restaurants or specific retail stores looking for and engaging with the stores more often that have the buy online, pick up in store. The acronym, we call it BOPIS. BOPIS. We don't want to say everything really long, but it's just been a major marketplace shift happening. The idea you said behind, you have a lot of these pop-ups, like you said, with gyms, things that you used to go to a physical place to engage, that now they can do a virtual environment. A lot as well with e-learning and online learning, online trainings. We've seen a pickup in those searches for that type of content, but also people offering that type of content. Because there is now a surge in demand for, well, if I can't leave my house, what am I going to do? Entertainment has seen a surge as well. I think there's a really funny article that I read, and I'm trying to remember if it's in our notes or if I saw it somewhere else, where they were looking at like shifts in terminology. And if you're running a paid account, there's certain words you might want to put as a negative, like tiger was, you might get where I'm going with this one. Tiger, for some reason, is getting searched a lot more frequently. King is getting searched much more frequently. There's certain words like Joe and exotic and Baskin, you might want to put as negatives on different types of accounts you're running, just because we're seeing uptick from people having much more time to engage in visual media. that like there's even a shift of how do you adjust your negative keyword strategy to make sure you're not showing up on terms that you would not have wanted to, or you might not want to.
Okay, I've got the title of your next blog post about this. Please, please, please call it "Don't Get Bit by the Tiger Long Tail." Come on, it works. It's like exactly that. It's the idea of like this long tail queries that are probably happening that are slowly taking your bid count up because people are adding random things plus Tiger King plus Baskin, and so your broad match is meeting these things because a lot of people have a lot more time to put in, sorry folks for my French, dumb shit into the query base, not coronavirus related, but just like really long query strings because they got
longer query strings. And then you even think about the behavior shifting. One of the ones I'm excited. So I do have a hard stop like at 9:55 Pacific time because I'm going into a weekly update meeting that starts at 10 that I'm leading. And we actually have one of our analysts, Angela, coming online to talk through. We do seasonal insights on a regular basis. It's just a matter of like when we try to publish them, sometimes they're like, oh, well, you've done Mother's Day the last 4 years. No one cares about Mother's Day. Well, guess what? People care about Mother's Day this year because everything we've talked about in the past has completely shifted and changed because Mother's Day falls right around that time frame when potentially states might come out of lockdown. Mm-hmm. So right now, good luck figuring out what are you going to do for your mom on Mother's Day because consumer shopping behaviors change because you can't necessarily, maybe it depends on you, but at least here in Washington, going Mother's Day shopping is not considered an essential item. So like cards, what's happening within the card industry? Is it virtual? What's happening on the virtual front? You can't take your mom out to breakfast or to lunch or potentially dinner. That's going to be up in the air. So like the typical gifts that people have looked to purchase, that is completely shifting. So like she's coming on in about an hour to talk us through like what are the shifts happening around Mother's Day and that we expect to see based on COVID-19 and the lockdown that people are in. And how do you then, if you're an advertiser, because we are literally doing this on a weekly basis, how do you start adapting your strategy now if you're in one of those categories? If you're FTD, you're probably in good shape as long as you're still able to receive the flowers because you're still shipping flowers on a regular basis, but it might mean you now have a whole other set of competition from other smaller, more local businesses that are getting in line and doing that advertising. So like these insights we're getting are pretty awesome and even more timely as we're going into some of these holidays and coming into just different points in time. What I will say is if you have customers and clients in the home and garden space, you'll want to start looking at some of the research and the insights trends because there's been a huge upshift as well as we're talking about verticals that are seeing it. Like a huge upshift. People are spending a lot more time at home, so they have more time for lawn care, yard maintenance, fixing that broken sink that's been broken for a while. Or my neighbor down the street has been talking about replacing his bathroom vanities forever. They got some delivered, Home Depot delivered to his front door, and they've been replacing all the vanities in their house, which was something they had talked about not doing for months, potentially a year. But now that they're working from home and they've got extra time where they really can't go out, they started it last weekend and they finished, I think they've already finished at least one of their 2 bathrooms where it's like you're seeing shifts where people aren't necessarily purchasing large ticket luxury goods because the economy is a little bit up in the air. Not everybody's certain about their jobs. And I know my heart goes out from just the conversations we've had with like digital marketing organization on Fridays, the virtual happy hour, of hearing the agencies that are really struggling because we've seen pulling back on the paid because they're not certain what's happening or they don't know how to fully meet the demand and delivery cycles. People pulling back on SEO projects because they're not certain what their income is going to be. We're just putting everybody in the industry sort of up in the air. But there are verticals that are still seeing purchase behavior happening and seeing sort of that uptick and lift where purchases might be getting pulled forward, where you normally see some of the home stuff start to happen in May, prepping for that June, July timeframe. They're getting pulled forward a month.
Do you think that's rife for disruption? So do you think because like there isn't, you might not be as I mean, okay, Home Depot used to be the one to sell me the vanity, right? But now someone comes in and they give me the vanity, but they also give me the instructions on how to put it together. They'll get on a video chat with me and they'll do that and walk me through it because I'm not having a plumber come in my house, right? So like, do you think companies that start to realize the problem in its totality aren't just possibly serving the right now, but they're serving essentially what could be the future, at least for the next year and a half, let's say, until we see vaccines, but then maybe just due to convenience, the future of what we could be seeing?
It's a great question. I'm not going to speculate on that end.
I mean, we're just listen. Everyone's a futurist at this point.
That end, I don't know, because like some of it, especially as we start to think of like the home repair, like I am hoping they're not going to be the how to do your electrical guides, because
no. Listen, you got to be smart. There's Darwinism here. You got to be smart to know what not to screw with in your house. I've realized that I will not be messing around with electricity. Plumbing is still a little scary for me because you mess it up, you got water everywhere. But
yeah,
again, like I also know what my limits are. So I know when I need to call someone in, but I also know if I was wanting to renovate something right now, I probably couldn't do it without an expert. At least an expert's over my shoulder or on my phone.
Well, combination of that, and we might start to see, and I wish I had downloaded, because I listened in briefly, but I was out last Friday, so I didn't listen through all of it. My partner in crime, Jeff Colon, he is the head of our brand studio. He did a general customer survey with Ask Susie, and they did a publication of it on Friday in a webinar, but I had it on while running around with both children, so I missed parts of it. And they talked through, how is consumer behavior shifting for like entertainment, education, the home stuff. And I think some of what they were coming out with is you have this idea where there are certain areas that are ripe for disruption, like on the home renovation. Let's just stay during that vein, because I've been also a person doing that, where you will see that people might not be starting a full kitchen remodel right now because you can't get the people into your house to do the work.
Right.
But if I feel confident enough that I can contact someone to explain, like, I need to remove this cabinet and because it's completely broken, and fix it, that there are YouTube videos. There are some of the professionals that can do walkthroughs and explain at least how do you do some of this smaller term, that they are going to be stepping in for that niche gap if they can't get there in person. That there could be the area for them to step in where you might have had some of these bigger box stores coming in because they just can't fulfill the need. Like we bought our home exactly a year ago. Our front door needed replaced. We tried to go through one of those local large box chains to get the front door replaced. We bought the door, and I think we waited 6 weeks for them to even send we paid in advance for the services, 6 weeks for them to come out. We thought they were replacing the door. They literally did a measurement of our door to make sure that we purchased the right door, which we'd already knew we purchased the right door. And then said it was going to be another 4 weeks to have somebody come out and put the door in. Which at that point,
in all fairness, you had a front door during this time.
We had a front door. It just had a
it wasn't like there was just a hole and you're just waiting.
No, we had about that much of a gap. We had a gap that was about an inch on the bottom of the door. So if you imagine in December, it gets a little cold and you spend a lot of money on heat. So it was literally like, okay, so we started calling around until we could find someone, a general handyman, who we'd already paid to have a separate service come and repair and put the door in. We've had him show up like the next day and put it in. Like maybe I could have done that myself, but since this was December and I didn't have to.
Listen, there's no judgment here. Nobody needs to be hanging doors, okay? Like, in all fairness.
There's things I can do. Like I've been redoing the entire garage, all the shelving in our garage. I am one of those people that's doing the buy online, pick up in store. Although I just discovered a local business in the town, like a tiny town, like 10 miles north, that they will do delivery to my house of all of our lumber needs for now $49.99. So you can best bet that with the holes in the deck that we discovered, the paint, they use paint to cover up a lot of rot. We will be manually going out there to replace holes in the deck over the next few weeks because I'm getting loads of lumber deposited. But what I will say is the businesses that we're discovering are businesses that are actively thinking about their marketing strategies. So they have been the ones that might not necessarily have pulled everything back, but they have looked at like, how do they update their websites? And this is where I'm going to pull this back in, since we are stuff talking about home remodel, maybe not as interesting to everybody on the call, but it's the businesses who have someone who is in their ear telling them, you still need to update your site. You need to update your data, update your information to make sure that if consumers are looking for product services, that they can find you. One thing that I am pretty proud of, and this goes back to Stefan, our original conversations 2 years ago, is that when we started to see the shifts happening with coronavirus, we being the Webmaster Tools side of the house, started talking to the WC3.org and Google, and we started conversations right away to say, hey, schema as it exists today is not enough. There needs to be a shift of something that can happen temporarily to come in and give context to the search engines of, this is not a permanent change in our business. This is a temporary change, a potential temporary shift that will not require all new content across every site, but that we can essentially do schema markup. So I was really proud that Google, Bing, WC3.org, that group came together in lightning speed to recreate essentially the schema markup for those temporary updates and changes. Now, if you're on the call and you haven't read, I'm hoping everybody on here has seen the COVID schema markup. If you haven't, the blog posts that we published on it, that when we released it, is the aka.ms/COVID schema. Where it really is going through and explaining, here's how to make the temporary updates that we can use as a signal. We as a search engine can use as a signal saying, you are now offering the buy online, pick up in store. Your event was postponed or delayed because you no longer can do an in-person event, and now it is moving to a digital event. Your restaurant that you can't eat in the restaurant, but you can pick up online. And here's the new contacts, the delivery, and all this information. So within the COVID schema, there is the ability to essentially use special announcements to mark it up, to give that business update so that we will ingest it as quickly as possible. The updates for us are coming through in the business pane, so maps, businesses, as well as through the regular search results. So that if you've updated your hours, you updated your information, it's getting pulled in and shown in real time. So for SEOs on the call, that is the action and go do today, is make sure that if you have a business that has changed its model and updated how you engage and interact with your customer base, use the use the special announcement schema created for the COVID-19 era to essentially let the search engines know that context so we can pull it in. The more websites that adopt that schema, the more different experiences we can create directly in the search results. So as adoption accelerates, then you'll start to see different ways that it's going directly into the SERPs and how it's used. And so that's been one of the biggest things I've been trying to get out there for the last month is, this is a temporary one. It is temporary. It's not meant to be a permanent make updates here, but as we have different, hopefully this is the only pandemic, but let's say you have now a hurricane that disrupts your business in a given area because everything that's happened. This schema could also be used for those type of incidents and scenarios. So it's not just a one-off just this time, but it's a schema that as SEOs we can start to use and adopt so that as business needs change on these special times, that the search engines understand it can essentially ingest that content in real time.
How about from a product perspective? Is there anything, I don't know if I've seen that yet within the schema, to be able to say like product is temporarily out of stock because specifically due to like, so that it's not going away. Cause I've had a lot of retailers talk to me about it. Like, I don't want a 302, right? But I also don't want all this out of stock stuff there, but it's only temporarily out of stock. We're just making certain things we can ship easier, more prevalent, and I think that's completely cool. Cause to me, that just means they're focusing on supply chain, and they're prioritizing supply chain to match what they can actually get out the door faster, easier, more conveniently.
I'm looking, I don't think I've seen the product level schema in that, but let me take that back to see if there's something on that end. I think that one, the question I think we're going to have if we propose that is going to be how many people are going to forget that they put it on that page at a product level and then be like, I don't understand. Why is this showing? It's out of stock. Is this special little, the special thing on our page. So I think I'm willing to bet that's what I'm going to hear back, which we had that even as we talked about the special announcement schema of like, how do we then educate a post event, make sure you pull it down? How do we have notifications, or are there notifications on that end?
Couldn't you just make it so that the engine stops paying attention to it?
Yeah, just stop
like you guys stop paying attention to it. Like you just, you guys, I'm not, but you know what I mean. The proverbial you goes like, you know what? you put the code on, it's irrelevant from now on. We don't treat it that way. And so therefore we reserve the right to change the way we display the schema and use it. So you can tag it all you want, but it's no longer useful. And so when this thing is over, they're just like, you know what? They send you a warning in Webmaster Tools and all the other products they can get access to you, let you know this is available. You weren't paying attention to it. They just stop focusing on it. And it's no longer there. It's still a tag on your site, but it's not going to have a real meaning anymore.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I think the question will be then, how do you do that when every country, every state, every region is going to have different time frame for it? So I think that when we go through
Damn
this,
you for using scale as an argument.
I know. And this is, and the sad side is this is like literally as we have the conversations internally and we talk about like, oh, we'll ignore it. Great. Well, we can maybe in China today, they could ignore it because there are things back to normal. But here in the US, we're still in the middle of the block. Right. So then you would have to have some way to scale. I'm just thinking the US. I mean, I think Texas.
Yeah, the patchwork of states that might come in, and then they're talking about counties and all this nonsense of like, oh, this county will come back and this one won't.
Yeah, Texas is on lockdown through, I think I heard June, it was June 10th. Yeah. They announced that a couple of weeks ago, literally the same day that Texas went to June 10th, we went to May 1st within Washington State. So because it is it's really funny because it actually ties in really well with the white paper I'm working on is a white paper around privacy, data, and trust. And that's what we're publishing next week. And I think one of the biggest challenges when you think about data and data privacy, data security is the fact that right now it is so patchwork. Not every, but countries are having their own frameworks, which don't all necessarily align to each other. Within the US, we have the potential of having 50 different privacy frameworks. Every state could have their own privacy framework. We already have the CCPA, the California Consumer Protection Act. Wow. So then as a business, and this goes back to the scale issue, how do you scale when every state, country, region has its own policy that you then have to figure out how do you adhere to and how do you change and shift how your businesses engages and interacts, especially when it comes to collecting data, collecting information, saving information, allowing consumers different levels of access to edit, delete, update. It goes back, it's that same area of scale on that end that right now, a lot of businesses, not all of them, and again, I'm not, the legal disclaimer that Microsoft says I have to place is I'm not a lawyer, so therefore I cannot make legal recommendations. Is that
we'll scroll it in the video.
Yeah, we'll put that in front. Yeah.
We'll do it super fast though, or really small font. You guys couldn't see it. It's a millimeter.
But it's literally the idea is you start with the lowest common denominator. What is the most strict requirement? And you start there because if you meet the most strict requirement, and it put your policy there, then it's easier to change and adopt for people who are the countries, regions, states that do not have as strict of policies. It's the same thing with schema. And when we roll out these updates of how do you interpret the data? How do you use it? Where do you use it? If it's not scalable at a global level, then it makes it really difficult because it's not a one size fits all solution. So it's that same sort of area. But yeah, I would say SEOs on the call. I know I see a couple of you. Schema markup, that is one area that you can start to talk to use on your clients for any of those temporary updates. I know I've been talking to Fabrice and Frederick, and because I was out up until Tuesday this week and I knew I had other things, I haven't got to sync back with them yet to see are we putting something in Webmaster Tools? Is there a notification? Because I know we do have some things with schema on the site. That I think is, I know we got how we ingest it. Are we doing as much on the visual side? I haven't got a chance to go back and sync with them because our product sync was on Monday and I came back Tuesday. So I will talk to them.
I am so happy to have had you on. I know you're at time, and I was just being cognizant of that for you. Christi, thank you so much for joining us. I think there's at least 3 more of these we want to do with you based on today. Just you've already given us so much to think about, as well as we want to take some of these and maybe dive into the depths of some of them as well in future conversations. So hopefully you'll be more than willing to join us for another one of these. We are excited to have a huge lineup for next week. I will be posting that on our LinkedIn group as well as on LinkedIn with all sorts of folks. Again, always 12 p.m. Eastern Standard, same time, same place. Thank you all for joining us. As always, stay home, stay safe, and stay connected. Have a wonderful weekend, everyone, and we will see you Monday.
Great.
All right, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks, Christy.
Thank you.